Slavery was a huge part of Roman society and economy, but how did it work? What were the lives of slaves like, and how did some of them manage to escape or even rebel against their masters? Let's find out. Slavery in Rome wasn't based on race or ethnicity, but on conquest and capture. The Romans enslaved millions of people from different regions and cultures, such as Gauls, Greeks, Jews, Africans, and even other Romans. Most of these slaves were prisoners of war captured during the many military campaigns that expanded the Roman Empire. Some were also kidnapped by pirates or slave traders, or sold by their own families or creditors. Slavery was so common in Rome that it's estimated that up to 40% of the population was enslaved at some point. That means there were more slaves than free citizens in Rome. Slaves were considered property and had no legal rights or protection. They could be bought, sold, traded, inherited, or freed by their owners at will. Slaves performed a variety of tasks and roles in Roman society depending on their skills, education, and status. Some slaves worked in harsh conditions in mines, farms, or construction sites where they faced brutal treatment and high mortality rates. Others worked as domestic servants, cooks, cleaners, gardeners, or personal attendants in wealthy households. Some slaves were also trained as gladiators, entertainers, musicians, teachers, doctors, or artisans. The most privileged slaves were those who worked for the state or the emperor. They had access to power and influence and could even manage large estates or public works. Some of these slaves became very wealthy and influential themselves, such as Narcissus, who was the secretary and advisor of Emperor Claudius. Slaves had different ways of coping with their conditions and expressing their resistance or discontent. Some slaves tried to escape from their masters either by running away or by joining underground networks of fugitives. Some even formed armed rebellions against the Roman authorities, such as the famous slave revolt led by Spartacus in 73 BC. Other slaves used more subtle forms of resistance, such as sabotage, theft, vandalism, or disobedience. Some also tried to preserve their identity and culture by practicing their own religion, language, or customs. Some slaves also found comfort and support in their fellow slaves or in their masters' families. Some even developed close relationships with their owners, sometimes becoming their friends, lovers, or confidants. Slavery wasn't always a permanent condition in Rome. Some slaves could become free in various ways. One way was through manumission, which was the formal act of freeing a slave by the owner. Manumission could be done for various reasons, such as gratitude, affection, loyalty, or reward. Sometimes slaves could also buy their own freedom by saving money or negotiating with their masters. Another way was through self-purchase, which was a legal contract that allowed a slave to work for himself or herself and pay a portion of his or her earnings to the master until the full price of freedom was paid. This way, the slave could enjoy some autonomy and dignity while still being technically enslaved. A third way was through enfranchisement, which was the granting of citizenship to a freed slave by the state or the emperor. This was a rare and prestigious honor which gave the former slave full legal rights and privileges as a Roman citizen. Freed slaves were known as freedmen or freedwomen in Rome. They had more rights and opportunities than slaves, but they still faced some limitations and discrimination in society. For example, they couldn't hold public office or marry freeborn citizens. They also had to maintain a bond of loyalty and gratitude to their former masters, who became their patrons. Some freedmen or freed women managed to achieve social mobility and success in various fields of activity. They could own property, run businesses, join guilds, or even become wealthy and influential patrons themselves. Some examples of successful freedmen are Trimalchio, a rich businessman and host of lavish parties, Epaphroditus, a former slave of Nero who became a powerful senator, and Horace, a famous poet who was the son of a freedman. However, not all freedmen and freedwomen had such happy endings. Some struggled to adapt to their new status and faced poverty, prejudice, or exploitation. Some even preferred to remain with their former masters as clients or dependents rather than face the challenges or uncertainties of freedom. Slavery was a complex and diverse phenomenon that shaped Roman society and culture in many ways. Slaves weren't just passive victims, but also active agents who had their own stories, struggles, and achievements. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget to leave a comment down below and let us know what you thought about this topic. See you next time!